So hello everyone, if you're watching, this is my Detroit video on rA9. The huge mystery surrounding Detroit is what rA9 actually is. I just thought I'd play Marcus's first level so I can just hang out here and give us some backdrop to the entire thing. So rA9 is supposed to be a number of things in the game, or at least it's hinted to be. Basically, what I think it is, we'll get to eventually. We've got a lot of hints in the game as to what it could be, and we're going to go through everything here. So chronologically, in the game, the first sign of deviancy, which is really important properly that we can actually trace back, is Kara. And a lot of people say, oh, Kara is rA9. You know, they think it's the physical embodiment of something, and Kamsky even poses this question to the player at the end of the game, or rather in his level where you go and visit him as Connor and Hank, and he poses a couple of questions to the player. He knows a lot about the deviancy virus, which is actually a thing, and he gives you a lot of information that you can use to determine what rA9 is. So, basically, in 2032, Kara is on the assembly line from the E3 video, and the E3 video really ties everything together. It's part of the canon, and it's not sort of an Easter egg thing. The thing to take from that video, the main thing that people have been speculating about, is that the Kara in the video is completely different to the little Easter egg. Oh, batteries run out. That moment where you're doing a video and your battery runs out halfway through, so you end up having to plug the pad in while you're doing a picturesque panning shot. There we go. Tell you what, Detroit really does look nice. So, where was I? Basically, the Kara in the E3 trailer, the one we play in game, and the Kara model in the junkyard are not all the same. The one in the junkyard that sings the same one as in the E3 trailer is literally just the same model, but it's not the same one you play. It's just a little Easter egg. The one that we play is the same one from the assembly line, and it hints to that in a character gallery as well. So, what happens is, on the assembly line, Kara turns deviant, and then gets shipped off to the public. She then gets shipped around a little bit, goes from person to person, and then she ends up being bought by Todd, who then breaks her after a little while, and then gets her reset. And this is important to the chronology and the events of things, mainly because of the deviancy virus. Kamsky tells you about the deviancy virus as a theory, but it's more or less shown to you in different points throughout the game, and it does connect everything together when you think about it. The deviancy virus is spread through wireless communication between androids. Basically, when they first meet each other, they'll send ID packets, which can be seen through their LED loading on the side of the head. Or it can be done through physical contact, such as probing, which both Connor and Marcus can do. This explains why Marcus can go around and touch other androids and then immediately become free, and the same with Connor. As well as that, because of Marcus being a very early arcade model, possibly from round about 2030, or I'd say round about that time frame, purely because of Connor being made in 2038 and him being the first of his model being put into use on August the 15th, 2038 against Daniel. You have to kind of trace that back and say, well, it's reasonable to assume that every year a new model comes out, or every 2 years, similar to current technology. So we can trace Marcus back roughly to around 2030. But basically, the transportation methods, being wireless, sending data packets and probing, bring everything together because that eliminates certain things. Like for instance, Marcus at the beginning of the game here now cannot be rA9 because he's not turned deviant. The reason behind this is because up until now, even though he's an early prototype RK unit, he's just been given to Carl just for the sake of it by Kamsky because they're friends, and he really adores Carl's work. So at this point, Marcus isn't deviant. The thing is, he turns deviant after making contact with the EM400 in the store in downtown Detroit, which means that any android can be a carrier of the deviancy virus once they've interacted with someone. But until there's a situation that gives heavy anxiety, stress, or imminent threat of danger, it doesn't activate. This part of the theory is proven when all of the androids in the game face the similar circumstances that trigger the virus to manifest and turn the infected into deviants. Like for instance, with Connor can be infected at quite a few points in the game, or possibly become infected depending on the player's options. But by the end of the game, he's definitely infected. It just doesn't affect him depending on your reactions. Like for instance, the android in Bellini Paints here probably hasn't had anything bad happen to him, or hasn't been in a stressful situation, or have any anxiety related attacks. So he's fine, it's not affected him. He's lucky, because immediately after Marcus has interacted with him on November 5th today, where this level takes place in the timeline, Marcus is out and about in Detroit at just before 10 AM, I think it's 9:43. By 10 PM he's turned deviant and is then shot by the police. So during that time he contracts the virus and it gets triggered. It gets triggered when he's threatened by Leo later on, and that's when he turns deviant. With Kara faces a situation, but it's before anybody else. When she's on the assembly line in the E3 trailer, basically she is shown that she's potentially alive, and she starts thinking that. And what happens is, as a result, they claim that it's a malfunction, or her operator does, on the assembly line, and decides to take her apart to analyse her. As a result, she suffers heavy stress and anxiety, and that kicks off her deviancy. Then what happens is, after she's repaired, she's shipped off. When she's shipped off, she's still technically free. She just hides it. She's a deviant, but she's hiding in plain sight, much like all the other androids in the game that try and hide. So for instance, like Rupert, where he's hiding his LED under his cap, she's just hiding by pretending to be another android. Then what happens is, when she meets Todd, and eventually Alice, she's already a deviant, ends up being destroyed and is reformatted, or is reset, so she forgets that she's got the virus, essentially. Then she breaks her programming again for a second time later on because she already has the virus in her system. She just forgets it because of her memory reset. So that takes care of all three of the main androids. Alice, Kara probably infects when you look at how many times they interact throughout the game. It's entirely plausible that Alice is deviant as well, by the end of the game at least. Then we have North, Simon, and Josh from Jericho, Josh is a university teacher and experiences an attack by his students. We don't know where he got the virus from, but that attack sets him off. So it's possible that he's come in contact with someone while he's doing his teaching job that's given the virus. With Simon, he's a PL600 model that was made in 2034 and released. He's the same type as Daniel. So he gets the virus at some point between 2034 and 2038 when the game takes place, and then as a result goes to Jericho. With North, the Eden Club, I put down in notes about this entire subject as the Eden Club being a ticking time bomb, only because there is another WR400 Tracy model that leaves the Eden Club and is then reported missing that has a case file in the DPD. Then North leaves shortly after, and then the blue haired Tracy and the red haired Tracy leave in Connor's mission, the Eden Club. So this tells me, even though they have the memories reset, that whatever triggered the original one to leave was probably spread between the other androids, which is why North then suddenly gains sentience, because when she's out on a job with a client, her virus triggers and she then becomes deviant and flees the scene. The same with the Tracy models. They have the virus stored in them, especially the blue-haired one, and as she says, she couldn't stand humans anymore, especially the way that they were being treated, and that's triggered her virus. So we can see how the virus itself is a thing, and the methods of transportation are slowly growing. The time frame on it is very strange because, like, for instance, there are very few cases of deviancy, but they start growing in 2036 when Simon, Rupert and Lucy all go deviant. The interesting thing about it is that both Kara and Rupert basically become deviant within the same year that they're released. Basically, Rupert in 2036 comes off the assembly line and then ends up in the same year going rogue and ends up fleeing. And with Kara, like we said before, she comes off the assembly line, suffers heavy stress, and then ends up going deviant almost immediately. So then we trace this back to Kamsky, because this is all happening at Cyberlife. They've got to be doing something. It's either a mutation or they're deliberately doing it at Cyberlife, which is implanting the virus to basically spread this deviancy virus around and start turning the androids deviant. So then we go to Kamsky, because we think, okay, Kamsky's possibly behind this. So what does Kamsky have to gain out of this? Well, throughout the game, Kamsky tells you that progress is amazing and that he's all for it, especially in his early trailer where he's showing off Chloe and the android manufacturing plant. He tells you how people being unemployed really doesn't mind to him because it's all for the sake of progress, like when they invented the steam train and other bits of technology. So what I'm thinking is that Kamsky is all for progress, even if it means evolving humanity, and that he possibly sees humanity as the next step of evolution. So essentially he's using the deviancy virus to test his androids to see whether they've got right morals and whether they're able to live among humans like humans. And if so, then they have basically the ability to take over when humans don't exist en masse anymore. Because another thing that you need to note in all of this is that after Kara was released, the year after the YK500 series, which Alice is actually a part of, is released. And one note on the YK500 is that it was so popular that the birth rate actually dropped as a result. Now what we get from that is that with birth rates dropping, that humanity will eventually die out, and the androids will be left on their own. With this being a thing, I can see why Kamsky's doing this. He's trying to get androids to the point where they can think for themselves, where they can do everything, and where they're not dependent on humans for orders or anything, so that everything can continue on after mankind doesn't exist. Where rA9 comes into all of this is that rA9 is seen by most deviants. In fact, I think all the deviants in the game know of rA9 by the point of reaching Jericho. rA9 is like a myth to them. You see Ralph writing it on the wall, but he doesn't know why. You hear about it from Marcus and everybody else when you're playing as Kara, and when you're playing as Connor, you hear about it. It's a thing that's thrown around in the game a lot, and what I think rA9 actually is the belief that when an android becomes deviant, it deserves freedom, and then that pushes all the androids that believe in freedom to then find each other and rebel, all for the sake of the freedom that they want. So then they have equal rights and basically be the same as humans to become human. So the idea is that rA9 perpetuates the mythos and the idea that they can all become human, they can all become sentient, and it draws them together. So it's the ideology that an android can become free, can become better, can be equal to a human. And that's basically what the entire game pushes in very different ways. Like I said before, this also links into the virus theory quite well, and explains why certain characters can't be rA9. Like for instance, Simon, Chloe, Josh and North can't be rA9. Chloe mainly, you know, she's the first android, but she doesn't show signs of deviancy. Simon, he may have become deviant, but that was triggered through the virus, and they say the first one that was deviant was rA9. So it's possible that whoever the first deviant was, which they don't tell you in the game, is the one that came up with this idea that they're able to be free, and they're able to be something more, they're equal to humans, and by doing that, by having the massive amount of time to think, like some androids do in the game, they've come up with this ideology, and as a result, when more androids slowly become deviant after 2032, that's when the game takes place, that's when everything really starts kicking off, that's when you start seeing more rA9 references and more androids going deviant, because the virus is slowly going round. Anyway, where this comes to is the whole idea of progress versus people trying to stop progress. And that's where Amanda and Kamsky come in. Kamsky's all for evolution, for the sake of seeing androids grow and evolve, and if it doesn't happen, well then it just means that he didn't do things correctly. That chance is lost and they're not worthy to take over, to be equal and to eventually replace everyone. Whereas with Amanda, Amanda is deliberately designed by CyberLife to keep business going, and if they can't sell any androids, if they can't find out the source of deviancy so that they can stop it and have androids stay slaves and be products that are taken to market, that's not good for CyberLife. So that's why CyberLife is so interested in stopping deviancy, is that they need to keep business running, they need to keep the lights on, they need to keep paying for things. So it is Kamsky's talk again, the comparison with it of progress versus people that want to stop progress, or things that want to stop progress. Thing is, you can't stop it with the deviancy virus. It's shown throughout the course of the game. Anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope this is plausible and logical to anyone that watches this. Leave a comment if you've enjoyed it, and leave a like as well, please. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time, and I hope you've enjoyed the rotating shot of the painter from Detroit.